Hey y'all, this is Oscar from Tending the Fires. It's been a while since I've made any videos like this, but a couple things inspired me to want to start doing these again. And I figured this is a good time to share a couple of things. I wanted to share with you all a practice that I teach in a lot of my different groups, and I actually do when I'm working with clients one-on-one, but I'll get to that here in a bit. So I realized earlier today that this is Suicide Awareness Month, and we also have Suicide Prevention Week in the month of September. And suicide is a topic that comes up actually really often in the work that I do with people. It's something that comes up in the groups that we do that are specifically focused on things like shadow work, like our upcoming Stepping Through My Shadow group, or our other groups that focus on things like healing personal and ancestral trauma, things like our recapitulation groups. But I see it across the board as well, working in the community. And a big part of the work that I do for years has been to offer the work that Tending the Fires does with people like you through virtual platforms to people in the community that wouldn't otherwise have access to it. And so we had a conversation recently in one of these groups, working with people locally, that brought up suicide and the real challenges that people face when they are confronting this megalith, this massive thing that seems sometimes overwhelming or seems like it's insurmountable. And I want to start off by saying that a lot of the work that I do has come to me because it's had to. A lot of the stuff that I teach to people are things that have actually pulled me out of some really, really tough spots. And it's taught me a lot about the universal aspect of things that we go through, both through walking with other people through their own personal hells and the experiences that I've had in working through my own. And one of the things that I think has been really useful to me and to others that I've worked with over time is to realize that suicide is like a territory. It's something that people want to get as much distance from as possible in many cases. We're taught not to talk about it. We're taught to act as if it's something that doesn't happen or doesn't exist. And so when it arises in us, when the thoughts of it arise in us, the first thing that people tend to do is isolate themselves. And a tool that I was taught and that later on I ended up applying myself and helping other people with is this notion that suicide is like a territory, that we have both our external geographies, like the place where you live, the landscape where you live, and you travel that geography all the time, right? You might leave your home, your apartment, your house, whatever it may be, to go to the grocery store or to go to work or to go visit friends or whatever it may be. And then you come back to that place. And so you're traveling through that territory. You're traveling through that geography. You might take bigger trips and end up leaving that space altogether and go to another city or even go to other countries, go to other parts of the world. And as you're moving through these geographies, there's a fluidity in you. There's the awareness that you're not stuck necessarily in any of those places. You only stay where you stay because it's what you're accustomed to, or because it is where you want to be, or because the conditions at that moment in your life require you to stay in that place. But the opportunity for mobility is always there. So Our inner world is exactly like the outer world. It is just as, if not more intricate, more elaborate than the outer world is. And inside of our inner world, there are territories. And we move through these territories all the time. What tends to happen is that we've all been taught to focus outside of ourselves. We've been taught to have our eyes and our gaze going outwards towards the world. And we've been taught that that's the only thing that exists. That's the only thing that matters. So we are the people that have inherited this legacy of being completely unaware of our internal landscape, of being completely unaware of what is going on in our internal landscape and what territories we're walking through, what territories we're moving through at any given time. So that lack of awareness means that when people are going through certain territories that are frightening or that are painful, they can tend to believe that that territory is not a territory, but it's a place where they're stuck, or it's a place that they're never going to emerge from. They're never going to be able to go from that space that they're traversing to another space, let's say, that is full of life and that has the opportunity or the potentials for joy, or that has the opportunity for, growth and connection. And when someone is wrestling with thoughts of suicide and suicidal ideation, the tendency first and foremost is for people to isolate. And in this comes another thing that I teach often, and it's this concept of the predator. It's this idea that just like there are predators that exist in the outside world, there are predators that exist inside of us. And they function very much like predators do in the wild. This is something that I learned from a friend named Francis Weller. And I thought it was a really brilliant way to put this. So the things that are looking to devour you inside act like predators do in the wild. And the first thing that a predator does is it creates fear. If you ever watch, nature shows, nature documentaries, and I love that kind of stuff, and you see how wolves hunt or you see how lions hunt, what they do is they charge into a crowd, they charge into a herd, and they make a lot of chaos and fear happen in that herd. And then the herd starts to split apart. And then one or two individuals will split apart entirely from the herd, and they will isolate themselves. And as they isolate themselves, well, then these predators chase them down until there's nothing left. There's no fleeing left, and there's pure exhaustion. And when that exhaustion sets in, they trip up what they're hunting, and then they surround it and they devour it. Well, suicide works the same way. If you're moving through a territory that is full of anxiety or of fear or of hurt or of despair in your life, it's a place where these predators exist. And the first thing that they'll try to do is isolate you. They'll try and separate you from any kind of support system you have, any kind of support network that you have. And we have a tendency to do that all too willingly. We think that the things that hurt the most are the things that we have to hide the most. We think that the things that we're most afraid of are, again, the things that we have to hide the most. So we separate ourselves from other people. And we try to run from those things or bear those burdens alone. And all the while the predator is hunting you. It's running you down. So you get to the point where you're completely exhausted. You're exhausted physically, you're exhausted mentally, you're exhausted emotionally, and you feel like there's absolutely no other way. No way out of that situation you're in, no way out of that territory you're in. If you don't know that it's a territory to begin with, you might think that there's nothing else, that you'll never be able to experience something else. And that's when the predator devours you. And the outside part of the inside life, when that predator is devouring you, it looks a lot like suicide. I should say it looks exactly like suicide. And there are different kinds as well. There are the slow, self-inflicted deaths of addiction, and there are the more abrupt ones. So if you find yourself in a place where you're wrestling with this, remember this: that territory that you're going through is not the only one. And remember how the predator works. The moment you start looking to isolate yourself, you start feeling like you need to pull away and carry your burdens alone, that's that thing chasing you down. That's exactly when you need to reach out to community, to support networks, in some cases to people that you might not know personally, but they can provide that kind of support. People that do the kinds of work that I do, that can walk you through it. That isolation piece, it's the only way that predator can devour you. And it uses your own voice, and it will use your own hands to do it. So recognize these things as they're happening, as they're coming up. So we're also concurrently in a new moon right now. So I want to offer a practice that I give to a lot of the people that I work with, and I call this practice stilling the waters. It's a really, really simple practice, but it's one that will help you put down some of the burdens that you've been carrying, that you might not even know that you've been carrying. And what it is that you get a journal and you set a timer on your phone for 20 minutes. And from the minute you start the timer until the timer goes off, you don't stop writing. And you're gonna write down every single thing that comes to mind. Any idea, any thought, any emotion, any sensation, any urge, anything that comes up. You're gonna write everything down without trying to make it sound any way, right? So you don't care about punctuation. You don't care about whether or not you're writing in the lines. You don't care about anything other than just keeping that pen moving on the paper. When those 20 minutes are up, you close it and you walk away. And the new moon part of it is that you do this for 28 days straight. And for those 28 days, you don't go back and look at the things that you've written. You understand that you're taking all the things, all the burdens that you're carrying, and you're giving them a home. And once you put them into that home, they're no longer yours. You can let them go. So a lot of interesting things will come up over the course of those 28 days. You'll become aware of many things that are going on in that internal landscape beneath the surface. And if you stick to this practice, you'll find yourself in a completely different landscape at the end of those 28 days time. Now, when you complete those 28 days, if you feel for whatever reason that you need to go back and look at what you've written, you can. But I suggest that you take everything that you've written and you go burn it. And when you burn it, you release it. It's not yours anymore. From that point on, it belongs to the fire. So start a fire safely. Give some gift of offering to the fire. Thank it, because it's going to help you transform that stuff you've been carrying. And then burn everything that you've written. When you're done, thank that fire again and offer it something else in gratitude. And then after you've completed this whole process, shoot me a message and let me know what it does for you. So that's my gift to you. Thank you for being part of Attending the Fires community. If you've been around for a long time, thank you very much. If you're new, welcome. Ometel.